Ladies, gentlemen, and friends beyond the binary, welcome to the Monday Discourse for today, September 20th, 2021, Election Day here in Canada. I am Tristan, the host of Step Back. I stream 2 days a week. On Mondays, I do a stream from 12 till 2, the Monday Discourse. That's what you're watching right now, starring typically Mia Mulder, but she is moving this week, so there will be no Mia until her internet comes back, because she has moved this week. So yeah, that's one thing. And then on Tuesday nights from 7 to 9, I do Step Back Tonight, a show with just me, where we look at the news, we look at stuff going on in the world, and answer some questions and all that kind of thing. Yeah. I go by he, him pronouns. If you want to find my work, you can go to stepbackhistory.com. And if you want to support my work financially, first of all, thank you very much. Second, you can go to patreon.com/stepbackhistory and support Step Back for as little as 84 cents a month with a yearly membership. And in doing so, you get to see videos early and with no ads or sponsor breaks. So if that's a thing that you care a lot about, then yeah, if it's worth your 84 cents, then go for it. You can also support my work by using your Amazon Prime account to use a free Twitch Prime subscription every month to support me on Twitch. It costs you no extra money. It's just part of your Amazon Prime membership, and you get one per month. So, yeah. Use it if you can on somebody. if it's me, I'm happy, but, do make sure that, the Bezos bucks don't just stay in Amazon's evil headquarters. Gosh. And also anything like, super chats, subscriptions, bits, all of them are welcome and appreciated. My latest content, if you haven't seen it, is a video for Stepback's 6th birthday on the topic of conspiracy theories. It's sort of a response to my first video. It's doing very well. Thank you guys for helping out with that. And I hope that you're enjoying it for what it is at the moment. In my next video, which should be coming out sometime near the end of October, maybe, who knows, my schedule is a little wonky, but it's going to be about overpopulation. Yeah. And the sort of really scary takes that are in the ways that people talk about overpopulation and the history of really bad takes about overpopulation. So, if that sounds like your bag, then I'm sure you will get a kick out of it. Chosen by the viewers, obviously. And, because, yeah, $5 plus patrons can help me vote on my next video topic, so that's pretty fun. And, yeah. If you want if you want to submit questions for future streams, or possibly this stream, because we are a little, without Mia, we don't have that many questions, so we'll see where that goes. But, yeah, I will put a link in the chat where you can submit questions to a Google form, and who knows, we might get to it today, or we might get to it in a future stream. I hang on to them for a month, so it's very rare that you get a question deleted unless you spam me with questions. Yeah. All right. Yeah, here's the link in the chat. Let me just post that. And yeah, the last thing I want to cover before we get going is if there's any new people in the chat, please make yourself known. Yeah, because this community is really awesome. And if this is your first time here, please say hi. So that is everything, I think. Should the School with Booze initiative fund it, or should it be a private initiative? I think it should be a community program. If there is such thing as a government, yeah, the government should be funding it because it is very useful. First of all, it's just for the general good, it would be useful, but also it would be very useful for a more flexible economy for people to retrain themselves for various different things. If people never really 100% stopped going to school. Yeah. Good water. What kind of school are we talking about? College, university, high school, primary school? The idea of this, the School with Booze initiative is a very, I think that's from a video from a couple years ago. It's the idea that, that our entire idea of education is pretty much messed up, and that if we had a more healthy society, we would embrace lifelong learning, and that everybody would still go to school, even if it's in a smaller capacity or not as often, not necessarily by compulsion, but just to, further enrich yourself and learn new things. And it's like a thing that people do, And yeah, it would be so good to do that. And so, but schools where adults go and hang out and learn about stuff and do cool projects and all that kind of stuff. Gosh, I think that was in my video on the Prussian school system, which is pretty old now. Okay, let's see what we got in the old question hole. It's good water. Thoughts on the California recall election and claims of election fraud? I mean, I don't really have much to say on the California election. It was another example of like 538 overstating, and like people like Nate Silver overstating the threat of the recall election. And yeah, it failed. And the other thing, too, is the claims of election fraud are just like now the norm. Donald Trump sort of set up the norm now. So every time the right loses an election, they're going to claim election fraud. That's just now, like, that's just their go-to thing now. Because the Republican Party specifically in America is getting to the point where they have a dying and shrinking voter base. And so in order to stay in power, they have to cling on to all of the anti-democratic aspects of the United States. And yeah, and as that gets smaller and smaller, they're going to use things like claims of election fraud to delegitimize elections in order to still try to cling on to what little power they can. So that's going to be part of it. So yeah, like just expect every election that Republicans lose to be claimed to be voter fraud from now on. The far right has been able to grow in the past year. The recall election is a good litmus test of how the far right has been able to grow within the past year. Even though Newsom kept his seat, it's still a very troubling situation. Yeah, all of these like anti-mask, anti-vaccine demonstrations, while also being super spreader events, are also locations for people to organize and radicalize. And so, yeah, the right has been through the basically supporting, like basically their pro-COVID political campaign have been organizing and radicalizing in pretty terrifying ways, and that when they flex that kind of power, it's going to be scary. They are getting to the point where it doesn't matter how much they try when you kill off enough of your base. Yeah, their pro contracting COVID base is dying. I don't know if it's in numbers that are going to move elections, but it's definitely high numbers, especially because COVID is also killing a lot of working class people on top of that. Like, the anti-vaxxers aren't the only people dying of COVID. It's the people who can't get vaccinated because their city doesn't have a nearby vaccination center or a public transit system, and they can't take time off work to recover from the vaccine side effects, and so they just don't get it. And there are a lot of people who are in that kind of a boat. In fact, I would probably argue that most people who are not vaccinated in the U.S., it's because of, one of those factors. So the next the other thing too is just that, the demographics of the Republican Party are aging, and they are almost exclusively white, and that white people are they are a majority of the United States right now, but that is a number that is changing ever so slightly. And America will be a much more diverse country in a few decades, and the Republicans have really not been able to be successful pivoting on the racism stuff without their base just absolutely getting up in uproar. So. What's my opinion on harsh lockdowns? Do you see them to be violations of human freedoms or a necessary policy to control the virus? Ooh. In some of these situations, in these like over the top, like the thing is that there's places where COVID is spilling out of control, and harsh lockdowns are really the only thing that can be done to stop things from actually from getting out of hand. But and they're not great when they come to freedom and such like that. But also there's situations where life and death are on the line, where this is more of a gray area. So yeah, especially because these are not permanent measures. These are not permanent policies. They're temporary measures put in place specifically until one set of circumstances are accomplished. there's like permanent harsh lockdowns, that'd be obviously too much. But lockdowns when the epidemiologists are saying that you need to be doing it makes sense to me. Default to the doctors. Let's see. Communist Party is actually objecting to the election results in Moscow, at least, where 9 CPRF... Oh, this is the Russian election. I haven't seen what's going on there. What are the chances of the Republicans falling apart, then a new left party takes over, and then remaining parties siding to the right so that maybe some kind in the next few decades? I don't know. The Republican Party is... It's in a tough situation right now, but they've been in tough situations before. Both political parties have been. And they sometimes lose elections for a while, but then they re-strategize, find a new winning coalition, and come back in. That's sort of the nature of American politics. The parties don't necessarily die. It's very rare when political parties die in America. It's more that they mutate, and they find a new angle to win elections, because they're not really based on many principles. They're based on, whatever works to win elections. And both of them have sort of carved out coalitions of people that they think are enough to win elections. And the Republicans are facing an issue with their voter demographics, and they've been trying different ways to try and expand that base, and it's been... they've had a major backlash. Like 2016 was supposed to be the time, like when they ran like Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz and stuff like that they were going to try to make an outreach to the Latino community in America, because despite the fact that they are a heavy Democratic supporting population, they actually are fairly socially conservative compared to the population, and they're very young, and they're the second largest racial group in America. But then Donald Trump swooped in and took over the party, and now they're like, well, shit, that sucks. Don't you guys remember Jeb? And how his like website had like a guacamole bowl as part of its merchandise? Did I see what happened with LRT in Ottawa? No, I didn't. I think the GOP goes hard right libertarian. We'll see. We'll see where they go at this point, because the party has a base that is made up of an increasingly radicalized far-right constituency that are enough to throw over primaries. But as we saw, it led to a one-term presidency, and in American politics, one-term presidencies are considered pretty big failures. And so the Republicans might think that they might do some stuff to prevent another Donald Trump, for example, from taking over the party. Because I imagine that they're probably going to try to... I mean, at this point right now, COVID is just like absolutely tearing the party apart, because getting the vaccine and or anti-vaccine stuff and like anti-mask stuff has sort of really like frayed the party from its like its elites versus its base. And but the thing is, like, I think that the conservatives tend to get in line when push comes to shove, and I imagine that there's no like insurgent third party move that's going to happen. So like if there is going to be changes, and if there is going to be like a major realignment in the Republican Party, it's going to be like internal. It's not going to be like a bull moose type situation or anything like that. And they're going to have to try to find new coalitions of people to win elections. Thoughts on the Taliban ruling Afghanistan? I mean, they're not my first choice, but also war sucks, so I'm not going to, deal that. Do I think O'Toole alienated his base and helped Bernier by condemning the folks throwing rocks at hospitals? Kind of. I think that Aaron O'Toole and the Conservatives still have a very strong idea in their election, in their like strategy, that they know that a lot of like they're like Conservatives know that they only win elections if they can win the suburbs around Toronto, and that's like the battleground for most times that the Conservatives win elections. They don't win all the time. They lose more often than they win because the Liberal Party basically runs Canada for most of the time. But if they do win, it's because the suburbs around Toronto have flipped Conservative. And to a lot of the people in those suburbs, the throwing gravel and like that kind of like decorum stuff, like that social conservative stuff, like all of the issues that have to do with like, you know, fighting gay rights and anti-abortion stuff, they know that those are tricky issues for the Toronto suburbs, because the Toronto suburbs have large immigrant populations and like, you know, they range all over the place. So if they lose the election, yeah, it'll probably be because the People's Party definitely siphoned a lot of their energy. They're kind of like siphoning a little bit of like the energy of the Conservatives and a lot of the energy of the, or a decent chunk of the energy of the Green Party. And while I don't think they're going to get any seats, I think they're maybe projected to get one seat, but even that would be a bit of a push. I'm also of the conviction that either the People's Party is going to, this is going to be the high watermark of the People's Party, and that as COVID becomes less of a thing that we deal with, the People's Party is going to be less of a thing, because the People's Party is basically just campaigning on anti-mask, anti-vaccine stuff. But, and that when we're kind of past COVID, or at least when like, you know, the controversy about masks and lockdowns and all that kind of stuff is kind of behind us, that a lot of them will just kind of return to the flock. They'll just return to the Conservatives. Or the other option is that if it continues to be an issue, if COVID doesn't go away and our next election is still during a pandemic, then they might merge, because conservative parties, as I said, the right get in line while the left tear each other apart. So I imagine that at some point, the People's Party, which is really just like a vanity project for Maxime Bernier, will eventually they'll get over themselves and they will have like a reunification with the Conservative Party in some fashion. But this election, they might cost. If the Conservatives win, they might have cost them a majority government. If the Conservatives lose, they cost them a victory altogether. So, train derailment in Ottawa. That's awful. Are there people who are hurt? Are people like? How bad is it? Is this like a big boat stuck situation, or is this like multiple fatalities situation? Didn't Jeb Bush come out as a non-binary femboy? Jesus Christ. Did you know that grassroots organizing is an alien concept to Democrats? This is true. The Democrats more take grassroots movements that arise on their own and try to co-opt them into their movement, but they don't do a lot of like the Republicans do, like actual like astroturfing, and like they grow their own controversies to make movements. Democrats don't do that. The Democratic strategy is always to take socially progressive and left-wing activist movements and try to absorb them and, you know, file off all their sharp edges and try to incorporate them into sort of the big blob. Because, I mean, this goes back to the Democratic, like, this is the thing. This is the thing that a lot of, like, the people who say, like, oh, the Democrats are, the Democrats are not like the Republicans in the sense that the Democrats are not an ideologically motivated party, really. They are a sheer, like, you know, caretaker type government. They very much try to sew together a very broad coalition, while the GOP is very solidly ideologically right-wing, which is like very like on like the Democratic Party's always been like this. The Democratic Party has at times in American history been the party of the Ku Klux Klan and black labor black labor activists in the North. They have at times been the party of anti-immigrants and immigrants. They have been the party of anti-Semites and Jews. They have been the Jewish communities and stuff like that. They have always been a very big and contradictory mess of different interest groups that don't necessarily align with each other. The Republicans used to be like that too until basically kind of Ronald Reagan really, well, a couple periods. There was Teddy Roosevelt basically purged all of the really progressive Republicans out of the party in the 1912 election, where all of the people who were really big on the really left wing of the Republican Party left the party, and it became a more ideologically right wing party. And then the absorbing the Southern strategy and absorbing the South, plus the rise of neoliberalism, that sort of combined made them focus on being a more ideological right-wing party. And now the generation that now everybody who grew up in the era of the Reagan Republicans have pretty much solidified the party as a as a very right-wing ideological party at this point. But now their whole thing is dealing with people who have completely gone off the deep end when it comes to far-right politics, and they don't really know how to deal with them. But yeah. Let's see. Greetings from the suburbs around Toronto. It sucks. Yeah, King Cug. Yeah, I know. I grew up in Burlington. I was born in Burlington. I lived there until 2010. I moved out in 2010. So Burlington's one of the suburbs of Toronto. So yeah, I remember this shit. Is it weird that a lot of Star Trek fans are conservatives, libertarian types? I mean, at this point, I very much am a person who believes that people's relationship with media is very personal, and that even the creators only have limited influence on what sort of connections get made between your life experiences and the media that you're consuming, which creates a unique interpretation for everybody who watches it. And so yeah, in some ways, it's hard to do this because it's hard to take yourself outside of yourself. That's why postmodernism is so useful. So it really is hard. As somebody who is very ideologically left wing, I watch Star Trek and I see socialism in everything. But as somebody who, if I was I don't know how a libertarian or a conservative would look at Star Trek and see something that they find admirable, you know, I imagine I imagine there's a way to do it. Because I know that Star Trek, especially because the writers of Star Trek have gone far out of their way to make sure they don't they mention there's no currency, but they also never explicitly say oh yeah, this is communism. We have made communism and that's why everything is good. They never did that. And they still have references to businesses and stuff like that. So I could see if there was if I had a different sort of life experience, I might be able to see interpreting Star Trek that way, but it would be, I don't know. It feels like it would be very weird. That is for sure. Aren't the People's Party really spread out so they cannot consolidate their gains? This is also true. Yeah. Right now they are polling at about 6% of the population. They're a little bit higher in Ontario, and a little bit higher than Ontario is Alberta. But even so, if there's going to be any victory for the People's Party tonight, it's probably going to be in Maxime Bernier's own riding. But and even then, that is a long shot at this point. So we'll see. Anti-trans stuff in one riding, yeah. Because the other thing too is the People's Party is obviously not ready for prime time because their candidates keep getting exposed for just being absolute weirdos. The ball breathing guy, and I don't know, every time somebody every time you find out about a PPC candidate, they're just like some of the weirdest people. So, yeah. Did you hear all the people who do real work to make Hollywood movies are talking about striking? Ooh. No, but that's cool. Does remind me, this is a really cool thing that I learned, or actually, it's just another sign of, like, you know, the horrors of late capitalism. But there's a reason why movies kind of suck these days, and it's because in order to drive higher and higher profits from movies, one of the things that they have to deal with, or they're trying to do what all capitalists do, which is lower labor costs. Now, almost every aspect of Hollywood is unionized. The screenwriters are unionized, directors are unionized, people who work on set are unionized. Almost every aspect of movie making is unionized, except for the people who do 3D graphics. All of the digital artists and stuff like that. Because that sort of industry propped up later in Hollywood's history, they were not at the time. They did not do that at the time when unionization was normal. So, if you're wondering why movies are so over-reliant on 3D animation and why there are so many 3D animated movies these days, it's because they can pay 3D animators less for their time than, say, like, you know, all the practical effects and hiring all the, like, actors and directors and writers. So they're cutting money from, like, scripts and practical effects because they know that they can get more bang from their buck just doing digital stuff. And that's why now they're doing weird stuff like filming movies before the script's even finished. It would seem fair to state that Republicans are proactive where Democrats are reactive then. Yeah, pretty much. Or that Republicans lead from the front while Democrats lead from behind. Let's see. Do I have a PS5 or Xbox Series X? No. The only console I have is a Switch. And that was the first console I ever bought since the PS2. And I don't know if or when I'll ever buy another one, because I don't really play a lot of video games, I'll be honest. And when I do, it's mostly PC games. But even so, I don't really play video games all that much, so. Burlington is slightly better than Oakville. Okay, very slightly. Just popping in to remind Canadians to vote today if you haven't yet already. Yeah, I've been doing get out the vote stuff with like, what's it called? I've been doing get out the vote stuff for the NDP. I'm probably gonna end up doing that today. So yeah. Oh boy. So yeah. Let's see. And it's very pro-American. I can get a little uncomfortable. Sometimes, not gonna lie, lately I feel like it's weird. The socialist utopia of the future has ships named after stuff from the American military and so forth. Yeah. The other thing, too, is that a lot of the older fans of Star Trek, they see it more as an extension of, like, the sort of optimistic space age. Like, yeah, like, there's definitely a militarism. If you were to see Star Trek as, like, cool military sci-fi, there are certain episodes you wouldn't like. There are certain episodes you would like. And also, yeah, the other thing, too, is that Star Trek, like, if there are some, like, aspects to it that I could see as right-wing, Like, for example, season 3 of Enterprise is very much like it's like 24 in space. You could see like a lot of the movies are a lot more like militarily focused. And yeah, there is something to be said about how they don't emphasize as much as they should that Starfleet's not a military organization primarily. It's an exploration thing. And so to like a casual viewer who, doesn't, or to even like a person who, just wants to willfully push some stuff aside, like you could see Starfleet as a military first. And the militarization of, everything. And that is a thing that a right-wing conservative would latch on to. Even though I would never want to talk to one of these people, listening to a right-wing person who is a fan of Star Trek and figuring out what they like would be interesting to hear. And yeah, a lot of times a lot of stuff is also like universalized American ideals. And if you think of the Federation as like a proxy for the United States, they are like, the powerful military that comes in and saves the day, which is very much a proxy for like American interventionist foreign policy, which, that could fit in the whole thing we're talking about here. Not to mention also, if you watch TOS, the 60s Star Trek show, is a lot more militaristic than later on. And they even reference to themselves as being soldiers, and like it has a lot more of an explicit Cold War footing, and there's a lot more like threats and stuff like that in a lot of episodes that you kind of forget if you don't watch the show, because a lot of the best episodes aren't like that. But yeah. One thing I really hate about the PPC, the People's Party of Canada, this is the far-right political party that has kind of propped up in the last couple of elections here, is that they have co-opted the color purple as their like representative thing. And as a fan of the color purple, I'm very not happy with this. Purple is my favorite color, and I hate that now it's associated with fascism in this country. So when am I planning to win the public vote? I'm not sure what you mean by that. Special effects are animators are unionized, just not special effects. Okay, yeah. Isn't a lot of animation work also outsourced to less expensive labor markets internationally? I know that was true back when they still did analog animations, but now that everything is done in like, what's that thing called? Toonzilla or whatever. There's some program now that they do it in. Now it's really, really like it's a lot easier these days to make 2D cartoons. The turnaround on those is a lot faster now. And in the past, when there was a lot of like mechanical handwork that needed to be done, yeah, they would outsource like making of cells and stuff like that to animation, like, sweatshops in places like South Korea. But I don't know if they still do that today, because it's just it's been the process has been made so much faster with the sort of new thing. So I don't know. I know it was the case. I don't know if it still is. Election thoughts. Do I have election thoughts? I mean, it's election today. I really hate that we had to have an election during a pandemic, and it turns out, like, looking at the polls and stuff like that, it's looking very likely that we're going to wind up almost in the exact same situation that we were in before the election, and that the only difference is that the Liberals, who were trying to do a naked power grab, are going to have an even weaker government than they had before. They're going to lose a few seats, and they'll probably still have the most, so they'll probably still be prime minister and stuff, which means that almost nothing will change, and we'll have spent all of this time and all of this energy and all of this money on nothing, and then we will go back to the polls probably in 2023, and just do this all over again. Which is also fun because then there's a provincial election here in 2022, so yeah. Do you remember when 2008 and the writers were on strike and most U.S. shows had a season and a half of their usual length that year? Yeah, and also I remember because that was also the time when reality shows just took over television, and they never really went back for that exact reason, because writers were unionized, and instead of paying writers what they are owed, they decided to double down on content that doesn't use writers. And then when they do, they have smaller writers' rooms. Notice how now there's a lot more shows that are less focused on a writer's room and more focused on like a single creator, like a single writer with maybe like a small team, because big writers' rooms are expensive and they don't want and they're unionized. They don't want to do that. So, yeah, the writers' strike had a profound impact on the television industry that we don't think about now because it was like 13 years ago. Is it true that conservatives are talking about doing stuff to restrict abortion rights in America? Yeah, it's been a project for like 40 years. When people tell Marxist-Leninists that the Soviet Union did bad things, they assume that Marxist-Leninists can't learn from past mistakes of the Soviet Union and more democratic state socialism. Okay, that's not a question. Yeah, Starfleet's always been quasi-military. Expansionism is there in Star Trek, however, military isn't always bad. Yeah. Yeah, there is definitely an what's it called? The only show that really challenged the expansionism of the Federation, like the assumption of expansion of the Federation, is Deep Space Nine, where the captain of the show starts off being like, all right, you're here to oversee this really tight diplomatic situation between these two people, but if you can you get these people to join the Federation? That'd be really cool. And then at the end of the show, spoiler alert, he becomes one of the advocates, saying that Bajor, the planet in the show, doesn't join the Federation, and actually is against doing that. And I think that's also really cool. Have you seen that video series comparing depictions of terrorism in Star Trek pre 9/11, post 9/11? I haven't seen that video series now. Election predictions. I hear the conservatives have had a poll boost, but didn't they lose more with more votes last time? Yeah, I have a feeling that the conservatives are going to get more votes again, but they are going to lose the election because of geography. Because the conservatives are going to get more votes because they'll have racked up massive victories in Alberta. And then they will, they will lose more seats because the liberal support is more spread out, like it always happens. The conservatives only really win when the Liberal Party collapses, and I don't think the NDP did well enough in this election for the liberals to have to show that the liberals had a real problem. They definitely are. They're definitely going to be weaker. And there's the one election prediction that I don't know if it's a prediction. It's just something that might happen that I'm going to look out for, is that if this is a step back, or I guess I shouldn't say that with my channel, but if this is like a backsliding for the liberals, if they lose seats tonight or in the next couple days, because I think there's going to be it's going to be like the American election. It's going to be a few days to count all the votes this time because of mail-ins. If they lose a lot of seats, I have a feeling that even if they maintain the government, I think that there's a reasonable chance that Justin Trudeau is probably going to step down, and probably Chrystia Freeland, who's been really gunning for the job, is going to probably step in and become prime minister. And who knows? Maybe we'll have our second unelected female prime minister in Canadian history. But also, she's really right-wing and really a pro-corporate liberal, so yeah. Could I make the argument that PD is libertarian, like a interstellar version of the NAP? I don't know what that. Oh, the Prime Directive. In a way, yeah, I guess. Let's see. Renegade Cup made an episode about what conservatives see in Star Trek. I think I watched that. I just don't remember a lot of it. Okay, let's see. Big agree we must reclaim purple. Yes, I agree. Am I a Prince fan too? I don't, not really actually. I don't hate Prince. I could not name a Prince song, honestly. Like, gun to my head, I could not name the name of a Prince song. Yeah, Boimler's speech in Lower Decks satirized that point. Yeah, Lower Decks is turning into, like, the second most based Star Trek. Like, at this point, I think Lower Decks might be my second favorite Star Trek. Next to Deep Space Nine. I'm really getting there. It's insanely good. I think Christian Heritage also used purple. Yeah, but Christian Heritage is a provincial party. It's not a federal party. And for some reason, I thought their colors were white and red. I don't remember. It's been a long time since I've seen them on the ballot, that's for sure. Toon Boom, that's the name of the program, yeah. What would I do to clean up the drug problem in Toronto? Harm reduction measures and addiction support, free addiction support treatments and stuff like that. And also a lot of drug abuse problems have to do are it's called a misery, a issue of misery, which means that, like, you know, a lot of drug addiction issues come from the fact that drugs are unsafe because they're not regulated by the government. So first thing you could do is, you know, legalize drugs so that at least what's being given, like this like whole fentanyl shit, can be nipped in the bud. The second thing is dealing with issues of poverty and depression and all that kind of thing, with helping people getting housed, helping people get, you know, the money they need to live, like a basic income system, and also for people who are struggling with addiction services and stuff like that. And for those who are still using despite everything, harm reduction methods on top of legalizing drugs, but also things like you know, safe injection sites and publicly available information on how to safely use different types of drugs, and yeah, like maybe safe houses and stuff like that for people to use in a environment where they're not going to be arrested, and they can be, if something goes wrong, they can be medically supervised. That's my hope. Let's see. Am I worried about the rising white supremacy in the U.S.? What do you think could be done to stop it? I am worried about it. Stopping it is going to require some, like, major, like, it's a reaction to the fall of the capitalist world order right now, that people are realizing just how bad everything is. And the way to stop it is obviously to do like a new sort of New Deal situation, to give people optimism for the future and make people not feel like they're threatened. And if if capitalism would go away and we could, give people the stuff they need and, like, make sure that everyone's taken care of, you'd have a lot less people turning to, like, white supremacist reactionary politics. Not saying you'd get rid of all of it, but you would definitely stop its energy. This election was pointless. Yep. When do the results start coming in? The polls close at 9. Or 9 or 9:30. Let me just check. Yeah, 9:30. So for the first polls are going to close at Eastern time at 9 o'clock because we have one province that is half an hour ahead time zone wise. So Newfoundland closes its polls at 9 o'clock Eastern or 9:30 Atlantic time for them. And then a half hour later, they'll close in Ontario and Quebec. And given that we know a lot about voting patterns, typically after the numbers start coming in from Ontario and Quebec, a lot of the election is already decided. They usually predict what government's going to come out pretty soon after the polls close in the Eastern time zone. But this election might be different because there's a high number of mail-in ballots, so it might be a few days. We don't know. Would I ever run for local office? I've considered it, but I feel like I have a internet presence that would pretty much, stop me from any real competitive election. I'm American. What's your thoughts on Quebec independence? I don't think it's I don't think that Quebec leaving Canada would be good for Canada or Quebec. Not economically, not culturally, not socially. Quebec has a lot of independence guaranteed through its constitution right now. It also benefits greatly from being in part of a connected economy with Canada. Canada benefits from Quebec being also a pretty large economy, and the dual French-English identity of the country being very important to its thing. And so in many ways, I think that Quebec leaving Canada would not really benefit them. That they don't really have much to gain, and they end up having a lot to lose because they've already got a lot of the protections that they want already enshrined. They've protected the French language pretty strongly. They have a lot of exemptions from constitutional rulings and stuff like that. So, yeah. No, in Canada. I don't know anything about conservatives trying to make abortion more difficult in Canada. I do know that there are some places where it's pretty hard to get an abortion in rural Canada, but I don't really know about active efforts to make it harder. If Ontario stays conservative in the next election, I feel the province is doomed. Yeah, I hope so. I hope that does not happen. I think that Doug Ford is pretty unpopular right now. And I imagine that the Conservatives, if there's a chance for the NDP to win an election in Ontario, it'll probably be next year. Are far-right parties allowed in Germany? AFD is a party, so there is something to that. What candidate am I supporting in my riding? Shauna Lukowitz, the NDP candidate. She's really the only left of center candidate on the entire ballot. My riding doesn't have a Green Party person. It doesn't have a communist person. It just has liberal, conservative, People's Party, and libertarian, and NDP. So the only vote is for the NDP. The only person I could vote for, who is at least the NDP are at least a left-leaning centrist party, which is better than any of the other options. Is it true that conservatives care to talk about doing stuff to restrict abortion rights? I don't know. One of the first episodes of TNG, Will Riker gets recruited by Starfleet's military inner circle and was planning a coup. The theme never goes away. Depends on the episode. That is true. Like, I watched TNG last year, or I rewatched it anyway. And yeah, corruption from within Starfleet was like a huge theme in that show. Like, I didn't realize there was like it's not a serialized show. It's very like episodic, but there is like recurring themes of like the rising threat of a resurgent Romulan Empire and like the growing like hawkish paranoia in the upper brass of Starfleet, and near the end dealing with like the Cardassians and stuff like that. So yeah. Well, the Cardassians are kind of, it's kind of inorganic. The Cardassians just show up one day, and then they're like, oh yeah, the Federation went to war with them off screen, and Chief O'Brien was there, and nobody ever talked about this before this, and it's like, oh, this is weird. Let's see. What about if they pull a Harper and call another election? Do the voters punish libs, or do we get another minority? At this point, I don't know what the liberals could do to save enough face to get elected again. The main thing I think would be is if the liberals could get a majority government, I think if either the People's Party really takes off, or the Conservative Party elects a much more ideologically like right-wing leader who's not like more of like a kind of right-leaning right-wing, kind of like a right of center centrist like Aaron O'Toole. Like if the Conservative Party, like if their leadership race had resulted in like Kelly Leach winning or something like that, that would have alienated enough people in the Toronto suburbs that the Liberals probably could have gotten a majority government again. But I don't know what a lot of what happened. Like the Liberals don't really win on their ideas; they more win on the Conservatives fucking up, like they regularly do. Like the Liberals just win by default. The default is a Liberal majority government, and they either go through periods where the party's particularly weak or particularly strong. And right now, it's weakening pretty hard because Justin Trudeau has turned to be a very divisive prime minister. Did Harper call 2 snap elections in a row? No, he dealt with, he had several minority governments in a row that resulted in votes of non-confidence. So they were pushed on him. Lower Decks is great, Picard and Discovery are trash. I disagree. I like all of them. They're different types of shows, but yeah. They're very much their own thing. Did you see the fish person in the last Lower Decks episode? Maybe. I think so. What do I think of Justin Trudeau will do after leaving office? He'll write a book and he'll do speaking tours and then just be a professional famous person like Barack Obama, kind of. And he'll exist to endorse candidates and give them the kiss of death, basically. Do you see the Chinese housing market crash? It's going to be like 2008. I don't know. I couldn't speculate on what's going on in China, honestly. Oh, thank you for the $2 super chat, John Barlich. What do I think of The Sopranos? I've only seen a few episodes. I don't really know too much about it. And thank you, Teabaggin, for the €2 super chat. If I use a leaf blower, would you die? I don't know. I don't think I would die. Have you read After the Revolution by Robert Evans? Seems up your alley. Yep, I have. It's a good book. Good book. It's that meme of the guy from what's it called? The Emperor's New Groove, just like okay, how does white supremacy take hold in the welfare states such as Sweden and Norway? Might want to wait for Mia for that question. Is rolling exit polling legal in Canada? Rolling exit polling, I don't think so. And also, like, it's not like the UK where the exit polls basically are like really, like, they're not as big a thing here. It's not like in the UK where, like, right after the polls close, you pretty much know who won the election already. That's not a thing here. Hey, thank you for the $10 super chat. Shocked for Life 561. Much appreciated. Like, I think Trudeau just wants to, after he leaves political life, Trudeau would just want to be what he always was beforehand, which is just a professional, like, just a rich person. Just a rich kid who never really had to do anything. But also, Justin Trudeau would also never, I don't know, I feel like he'll be forced out. He won't retire himself. Although he's already been prime minister for 6 years, so maybe it's about time we got rid of him. Or maybe it's about time maybe he would resign if he realized that it looks like he's not going to be able to make another majority government happen after being prime minister since 2015 and not having a majority government since 2019. He probably would, yeah. All right. Do I think California should secede from the union with the U.S.? I don't know. I don't think it would solve California's problems because California is not this progressive bastion people think it is. It's divided in much the same way America is. They would just have the exact same fights between rich Los Angeles elites and marginalized people who work in the service industry and are underpaid and right-wing cranks who live in the sort of rural areas. NDP has a huge lead in Alberta, too. That'd be nice. Yeah, if the UCP loses in the next Alberta election, that'd be pretty nice. Yeah, because Jason Kenney, I imagine, is super, super unpopular with how bad he's fucking up COVID right now. Like, it's so bad that they think he's going to resign or something, which is pretty cool. What do you think of people who say they don't want to vote NDP because they're tired of Andrea Horwath? I mean, I don't know why that's a big deal. Andrea Horwath is, as far as New Democrats go, she's like fine. Andrea Horwath is the leader of the Ontario NDP, so if she wins the election in 2022, she'll become the premier. She's fine. As far as New Democrats go, I mean, fine. Why is Canada more left than USA? Because the USA did a targeted ideological project to purge the left from its acceptable political spectrum. They literally blackballed people, destroyed their careers, even killed and deported lots of people for being leftists. The Red Scare destroyed the lives of pretty much every person who ever associated with left-wing politics. And for a long time, you basically could not be left-wing in America. It would actually ruin your life. And that's probably and years of that, multiple generations of that have fostered a strong anti-left political sentiment in America, both politically and culturally. And yeah, I guess having a viable third party also helps. Klingons too. Yeah, I forgot about how there's a whole lot of Klingon politics in TNG. Yeah, with Gowron and everything. Yeah, I totally forgot about that. I feel like I'm just picking up random bunch of different threads and picking them up, building on them, putting it back down, and moving on to the next to another one. When Harper speaks French, his L's sound like R's for some reason. So he would talk about Canada having enough to repeat erections, and so It went on to be one of the best things the Harper regime used. Yeah, Stephen Harper was obviously taught French very quickly in like a some sort of haphazard tutoring situation. So yeah, his French was just all over the place. Do I play any games? I play Dungeons and Dragons. I play Gloomhaven with my wife. Sometimes I'm playing Wildermyth these days. Been playing Breath of the Wild. That's about my my video game diet right now. Any thoughts on Merkel's life after stepping down? I don't even know the first thing about Angela Merkel. So the fate of Germany is very uncertain. Maybe Trudeau will realize if he stops being prime minister, he'll have free time to do blackface. Oh, God. Preferred meat, beef, chicken, pork, fish, or shellfish? Ooh. I do like shellfish. I do like clams and oysters and stuff like that, as well as like shrimp and stuff. So I don't get to have it that often, so I'll go with that. Although I'm on a very restrictive diet, so I can't really eat a lot of meat anyway. Horvath is a landlord. I did not know that. But also, who else are you going to vote for in Ontario, really? Like, voting is, like, the smallest thing to do. And in many ways, it's more often it's damage control than actually, like, pushing for a good project. And even if Horvath is a landlord, which, that sucks. But also, if the NDP can give us, like, pharmacare or, help, like, pharmacare, dental care, public psychotherapist stuff, or maybe even cover education. Like, even if she does like one of those things, I would be very happy. And like in many ways, like the best I can hope for is in Canadian like electoral politics is get the NDP elected and get one of these like social democratic programs that we should have had 50 years ago. That's like my highest hope for electoral politics right now in Canada. And pharmacare is a thing that the NDP are pushing pretty hard, and it would result in an objectively better life for a lot of people in this country. So I'm down for that. And at the federal level, the NDP getting a good push would be something around the lines of changing doing electoral reform, which is extremely overdue in this country. Would you say that the long-term treatment of the left caused us trauma that results in the hypervigilance of left cancel culture? I don't know, like cancel culture is a very overstated thing of existing, but I do think that a lot of the paranoia and a lot of the infighting and stuff like that has roots in the fact that there has been a long and concerted project to undermine and destroy left-wing movements in the West, and so that's why a lot of times we can't do a lot of solidarity because we've just been divided and conquered so many times by the right. Or by the state. Have I played Disco Elysium? No, I've bought it. I'm going to play it someday. It's on my list. I really want to play it. And I have it. I just haven't played it yet. Is Gloomhaven fun with your wife? I have thought about doing that, but worry about a costly misstep. I found it pretty fun. There is actually we don't have the main game because the main game is like $100. We might buy that, but at the moment we're playing a version of it called Jaws of the Lion, which is about half the price of a regular Gloomhaven game, and it is pretty fun. It is much cheaper, and if you're worried about making a costly misstep, that is a good way to start. Play Jaws of the Lion and go from there. And we're having a pretty fun go of it. It's a really good way to after dinner on Friday night, set up the board, play one scenario, and then like, move on. And then, the board games, the thing's got like 20, 30 scenarios in it. So it's like, oh, this is going to like last us like a long time. Really good thing for when the baby's born, because then it's a game that we can play while like, but in between taking care of baby stuff. Talking about uncertainty, thoughts on the Chilean new constitution. I couldn't even begin to have a smart conversation about the Chilean constitution. There are a lot of people who are way better at that. Not eating meat is malnutrition. Well, that's disputed, but I'm not like a vegan or anything like that. I just don't eat a lot of meat. And you can be perfectly healthy not eating meat. You don't have to. The only thing that becomes even a little bit of an issue with meat precisely is vitamin B12 and omega-3. And there are ways to do that. There are ways to take care of that if you're a vegan, if you don't eat meat, to get omega-3 and vitamin B12. So there are supplements everywhere for that. But I'm not vegan. I just what's it called? I just don't eat a lot of meat for health reasons. Comprenez-vous ce message? Ouais. I understand your message. Mental health care and teeth. Yeah. Canada's healthcare system doesn't cover dentistry and it doesn't cover psychiatry. And it also doesn't cover medication. So the NDP's big platform are to expand Canadian healthcare to those aspects. Do I like sushi? I love sushi. Recently learned from your channel. I learned of your channel from Mildred and have been binging your videos since. That's awesome, Hoomter. Thank you. Mildred's my like #1 hype man. To the point where like our mutual audiences are like a very, very close Venn diagram. Although his audience is a lot bigger now. He's huge. His YouTube's huge now. Is it possible to permanently suppress left-wing ideas with violence? I mean, I don't think it's possible to suppress any ideas with violence. I don't know if you've noticed, but we can't even kill fascism, despite like having a World War II about it. So I don't know. It feels like it's kind of impossible to really like completely eradicate an idea. When does the baby due? I'm sure you've talked about it already. January. He's probably gonna the like official due date is going to be like, I think it's like January 13th. But because of like medical stuff, we're probably going to be doing like an induced labor situation and probably end up having him a couple weeks early. So probably like, like January 6th or something like that. Or at least that's when we'll start. And it'll probably be like, the 7th or the 8th or something. Eating meat doesn't make your diet healthy automatically either. That is true. Like a lot of mammalian meat, like beef and stuff like that, is very high in saturated and trans fats, which are very bad for you. The only really healthy meats are like bivalves and like light poultry, and also very lean pork. Oh, right. I forgot about iron. Yeah. Anemia can sometimes also be an issue with people who don't eat meat, but also don't regularly supplement their diet with other iron-rich foods like spinach and stuff. So, yeah, iron can also be a problem. But the only, like, micronutrients that, like, you absolutely, like are very hard to get from anything but meat is vitamin B12 and omega-3 fatty acids. But it is very easy to just get supplements of that now. So, yeah. And there is still foods that are not meat that are or that are not animal products that are high in vitamin B12 and omega-3s. It's just that they're less common, and so if you are a vegan and you are kind of not being very careful about what you're eating, then it could be a problem. Do you have public dentists at all? I don't actually know. Does Canadian healthcare cover eyesight? No, it doesn't. That is also another thing. Yeah. You have individualist anarchist schools of thought like Stirner, but that's a minority among anarchist groups. To an extent, in North America, individualist anarchist movements and communist anarchist movements sort of like merged, and that like a lot of people are closer to like Emma Goldman, who have aspects of individualist anarchism, like anarcho-feminism and like, you know, emphasis on like you know, like free love and like all these other kinds of like freedom of conscience type anarchist issues, while at the same time also being communists. They had a synthesis of ideas, and the ones who really stuck to just individualist anarchists eventually became like the intellectual forefathers of the libertarians. So. I became Thought Science patron when Peter Coffin went off the rails. I feel like I had to replace one NB person with another. Cool. I thought pork was the worst. Pork, yeah, no, it's not as bad as beef when it comes to saturated and trans fats. There are lean cuts of pork that like don't like obviously not like bacon and sausage and shit, but like there is like, you know, pork chops that you can get that are pretty lean. Eat 6 walnuts a day and you got your omega-3 covered. Yeah, there you go. If everyone has iron in their blood, why can't Magneto control people's bodies? Wasn't there like a scene in one of the movies where they actually like they got Mystique to inject the prison guard with something like a bunch of iron, and somehow he didn't feel it at all, and then Magneto like pulled it out of his body or something like that. It was such like a silly move, but yeah, I do remember that being a thing. Is there a difference between communism and anarcho-communism? I mean, communists are people who, like, I think both of them desire the same state of affairs at the end of the day. Anarchists just tend to disagree with other forms of communists because over methods, how to get there, what necessary steps need to happen to get to the, you know, stateless the stateless, classless society that we all desire. It's a disagreement on how, not what. When did I realize you were an anarchist? Congratulations on becoming a father, by the way. Thank you. I realized I became an anarchist in 2009 when I was I would have been about 20, 21, depending what time of year it was. And I did so just because I was on YouTube, and honestly, it's weird because like I ended up finding like a lot of like, you know, ANCAP content, and while I did not agree with the things that they had to say, it did at least awaken the idea of like, oh, there are ways to organize society that don't involve governments. That is interesting. And I was already probably like a democratic socialist at that point. And so in my mind, I was like, well, what if there's got to be like a left-wing version of anarchism? I remember distinctly thinking like, what if because in my mind, anarchism was just ANCAPs at that point. That's how bad YouTube was in 2009. And so I was just like, what if there was like a version of anarchism that was left-wing? And then I just did a Google search and found out about Peter Kropotkin and everything. And I was like, oh, okay, this is a trend that's been here for a long time. And then I just kind of went from there. Would I agree that state capitalism is still preferable to American private-style capitalism? Sure. Yeah, of course. You can defeat Magneto with a wooden gun, though. Ha, that'd be cool. Pretty sure it's canon that he can cause strokes and whatnot. Ah, good stuff. What's the best restaurant in Canada? I'm really a big fan of Canadian A&W. If you can ever get there. Am I familiar with Richard Wolff? Yeah, I know about Richard Wolff and Economic Update and everything. Yeah. Let's see. Whatever you are, you owe your time and place to your host nations, Aboriginal title holders, First Nations support, First Nations land back on Turtle Island. Oh, yeah. Did Stefan Molyneux turn you into an anarchist? He wasn't the person who turned me into an anarchist, but he was one of the YouTubers that I saw that introduced me to the idea of the concept that there could be no states. And that, there's other ways to look at it and, diverge pretty quickly from there. But yeah. I never actually was an ANCAP. I never was convinced by their ideas. I just was intrigued by the idea of no government. Hear about those Black Hammer guys protesting in front of the CDC. A friend of mine, they're basically Nazguls by way of the Black Panthers. Oh boy. It's fun how we just find out about new kinds of people constantly. Thinking about Magneto, I'm very concerned how it will be portrayed when they bring the X-Men into the MCU. In fact, I'm not looking forward to them X-Men in the MCU because of the politics of the MCU. There is that, and also the fact that it's going to be tough to introduce a lot of the X-Men stuff for the MCU because the politics of the of X-Men are so rooted in the 60s and 70s, and the civil rights movement. Because the X-Men series is basically at least it started as an analogy for the civil rights movement. And at the same time, also, the whole, backstory of the X-Men is supposed to be, rooted in mutants being a phenomenon that is familiar and a big, the whole, civil rights around these people is very much, part of the story of X-Men and mutants in general. And I can't, for example, the whole thing about, Magneto being a Holocaust survivor is going to be pretty tough to justify in pretty hard to justify for, because Magneto would be 100 years old at this point, and at the same time, that would mean that there were mutants as far back as World War II, and we've gone through all of these fucking movies and we haven't seen a single mutant, so, yeah. Can you think of a species in Star Trek that can't be defined by one characteristic? Gosh. Probably the ones that they haven't really done a lot of work on in general. I think of the Andorians or the Tellarites. They're not one note, they're zero note. I can't think of a very if you were to say what is the one characteristic of Andorians, unless it's blue. Is blue a characteristic that you're going to go for? But their society isn't entirely built around blue. Booleans too, I guess. Well, Booleans, their whole thing is that their one characteristic is that they have rank shits apparently, which I think is always funny. Do I think Chomsky's becoming more of a liberal now? I don't know about that. I think Chomsky's just... Chomsky's one of those people, a rare breed of leftist. Somebody who came to left-wing politics before Bernie Sanders ran for president. And so is very used to... Chomsky has lived for decades in times where being a left-wing person was something that, you could lose your entire career over, and you were extremely unpopular and marginalized. So a lot of, older leftists have their politics a lot more tempered by the fact that they have seen left-wing projects lose again and again and again. And so a lot of the times, they hedge their positions and stuff like that, and that's why I think Chomsky says a lot of the kind of questionable things that he does say. But that's yeah. Am I tired of reading questions? It's basically a chunk of my job now. I'll be taking a couple months off in January anyway, so that'll be fun. Wonder if the MCU will pull a reverse House of M. Yeah, the thing is they're kind of trying to set up like multiverses and multiple like timelines and stuff like that with these most recent movies. So my guess is that that the mutants will probably be from a different version of the real world where mutants are a thing. That's my guess. Magneto is Malcolm X. Basically, obviously, it's not exactly the most fair interpretation, but that was like Stan Lee's inspiration for Professor X, and Magneto was supposed to be freaking Malcolm X as Magneto and Martin Luther King as Professor X. That is the idea they were going for. It's a white person trying to write a metaphor about a civil rights issue that he is most definitely not at the center of. So it is not exactly done amazingly, but yeah, that is the general idea. How's the election going up north? Was looking earlier. It seems like it's going to be another lib-led minority government. Yeah, almost nothing is going to change. The NDP might make some gains, but I don't know if it's going to make much of a difference in the sort of dynamics of politics right now. The Andorians are standoffish and the Tellarites are smart. Are they? I thought the Tellarites are... if they're known for anything, it's just like they're dicks. What are the differences between Native Americans in the U.S. and Indigenous peoples in Canada? There's more of them. Like, as a proportion of the population, there are much more Indigenous people per capita in Canada than in the U.S. There wasn't as much of, like... There was still a, targeted genocide and mass, deportation program. But in some parts of the country, it was less so. So there are more Indigenous people in Canada living on their ancestral territory in some capacity, although they have been shepherded into these reserves that are in the less desirable parts of them. But there wasn't at least there wasn't as much of something like a Trail of Tears or something like that. But it's still we've had our own horrors, the residential school system, and yeah, there's still many projects. Yeah. The only canonications we have are either background roles or from the animated series. I mean, Dr. T'Ana is great, yeah. In Star Trek, Caitians are... can you imagine trying to do a Caitian in a live-action Star Trek show? There's no way that you're going to make that not look really Uncanny Valley or like a stupid rubber mask. They're cat people. It'd be pretty tough to do that in anything but an animated situation. In Age of Ultron, they're supposed to think Tony is a bad guy for wanting people with powers to be registered and regulated. Would that make more sense if mutants existed? Probably. I still am having the ability to commit mass violence with superpowers does feel like something that we probably should be be aware of, in the same way that you register weapons and stuff. Do you think they could use more recent genocide? Yeah, I guess they could make they could make Magneto a I don't know, Bosnian or something, I guess. Yeah, I don't know what they're gonna do. Or they'll probably, because they don't really like to do real life politics in the Marvel movies these days, they'll probably have him be the victim of a genocide in some fake country like Sokovia or something. They'll probably have Magneto come from the same country as, I think it's Sokovia, the country that the Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver were from. and that he's just like, he's a result of like some mass violence that happened there, if I were to guess anything. Or they'll do like a different dimension thing, and that the X-Men universe that gets crossed over is like it's in the 1970s or 80s or something. Hey, step back, can you dab? Sure. Aren't the Tellarites supposed to be clever engineers? Or am I about grafting fantasy dwarf stereotypes? Oh, yeah, I think they are supposed to be like engineers or something, yeah. But then they have more than one thing, because they're also known for being argumentative or something. Chomsky's also in his 90s. He lived through McCarthy's purges, the perpetual red baiting of the 60s through the 2000s. He's a product of his time, and has a bad end of history stint to his later works. Yeah. How many Native American nations are bisected by the U.S.-Canadian borders? I don't know the exact number, but it's quite a few. And we have some stuff on the books so that people who have tribal or national identities that are associated with groups whose territory straddles the border are able to cross the border without a passport. So that is a thing that exists. All right. Let's see. Make Magneto Ugandan. Ooh, that'd be fun. Muslim Magneto is shit I'm here for. That could be interesting. Although, in the end, the thing is that Magneto, in some ways, is very based. But in other ways, he's supposed to be wrong. You know, the X-Men are supposed to be right, and that working with humans is supposed to be, and working together for a better tomorrow is supposed to be the better answer than mutant nationalism or whatever. And they wouldn't do that with a Muslim Magneto, I don't think, because that would be extremely racist. I love that Scarlet Witch, who's from a made-up European nation with a Slavic-sounding name, doesn't have a foreign accent. I mean, she does. It comes and goes, but they were like, she definitely like in WandaVision. Sometimes she does have the accent, and sometimes she doesn't. All right. What if they made him Rwandan? Imagine how much that would piss off the chuds. Oh boy. Black African Magneto. Who knows? So it makes me think that they would think that that is too much of a risk, and that Magneto might not be the victim of a genocide. That just might be not a thing they touch. That he'll just be a bad guy, because they don't the closest they ever came to having a villain who was actually had good motivations was Killmonger, and I feel like Killmonger was too controversial for them. I don't know if they would do that again. All right. Most illegal guns in Canada come through those places. Yeah, good luck avoiding that because of the core. Yeah, that's the thing, is that the Marvel is either going the Marvel movie X-Men are going to either have their politics stripped from them, and they're just gonna be like, look, it's Wolverine, he has claws. Look, it is Cyclops. Look at him shoot laser. And that it'll be the politics will just be a general message of oppression bad. Even the Fox movies, the early ones, had a sort of gay rights metaphor kind of in it, but I imagine that Disney, because they want to sell these movies in China, they won't even go that far. Like it would just be like generally like being bad to people is bad will be their like deepest message they get. And yeah, the X-Men will be, because X-Men was like a deeply political comic series, it'll be completely like empty. It'll have no point to it. Just like how depressing whatever Disney does with Deadpool, because they're gonna do something and it's gonna suck. What music do I enjoy? That's a good question. I don't really listen to a lot of music these days. The X-Men are anti-black nationalist propaganda then. Yeah, kind of, actually. I think it's more done out of ignorance than malice, but yeah. Stand by the theory that Killmonger's flaw was that he internalized U.S. imperialism too much and that's why he was bad. Okay. My Black Panther knowledge is limited, but I think Killmonger is from that area. I'd need to check with my friends. Yeah, he's like he's either like, I think he's like the illegitimate hidden child of Black Panther's uncle. So I think they're cousins. But he grew up in America, and so he didn't get to live in the, you know, Afro-futurist utopia that is Wakanda. So he's like, his whole thing is like, we've got all this shit, we should use it to liberate all of the people around the world. They should make Magneto a Uyghur. Oh man, they would never do that in a million years. Uyghur people don't exist in the MCU. Because, what's it called? They make so much money off of playing movies in China. They will just never, ever, 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 ever touch that with a million foot pole. Bring back Elliot Page as trans Kitty Pryde. That'd be cool. That would be cool. Rip motherfucking Doom. Yeah, I guess they have to do Doctor Doom at some point. And he's another, like, you know, from a fictional Eastern European country. He's like, they'll make him the dictator of Sokovia. Whenever they do the Fantastic Four stuff. Fan Four Stick. I don't know when that's ever going to happen, though. Didn't they already say they're working on a Fantastic Four movie? I don't remember. I don't follow Marvel that much. I don't know what they're up to anymore. Elliot Page as, like, Kit Pryde would be pretty cool. You know how in Deep Space Nine the Bajoran Resistance used terrorist tactics to kick out the Cardassians and it actually worked? Do you think CBS would let them do that today? Oh, fuck no. Well, they might do it today because of the reference to the Bajorans. Like, they might let the Bajorans do that specifically, but if they just ran into an alien group that used terrorist tactics to defeat an empire, yeah, they wouldn't do that today. It'd be way too out there for our age, which is in many ways a little more conservative on those kinds of issues than the 90s. Sokovia could have splintered from Latveria during the Cold War or something, yeah. Doom will take over Sokovia and rename it to its historical name, Latveria. There you go. That sounds like Disney thinking. I'm convinced there's no way that you can do a Fantastic Four movie that's going to be any good. I mean, if you leaned... The thing is that every Marvel... or every time people try to do the Fantastic Four, they try to make it serious. The last one was even, like, body horror-esque. But the thing is that the Fantastic Four are, like, literally, like, their name is the Fantastic Four. They're big, they're silly, it's, like, over the top. The villains they fight are, like, literally, like, people with names like Doctor Doom. And they're, like, big, over-the-top villains, like, and they deal with, like, you know, giant people who want to eat the earth and stuff. Like, they need to, like, lean into the campiness of it, which, I don't know, like, maybe, what's it called? Maybe Doom. Maybe they'll do that. Maybe the Marvel will be able to at least do a little bit more of that than they thought they could get away with in the early 2000s with those really weird movies. MF Doom was a rapper. Oh, did he just recently die? Oh, listen to MF Doom and cry with the rest of us. Okay. People said you couldn't do a good Captain America movie or a good Guardians of the Galaxy movie. Yeah, that's true. They'd give the right director the Fantastic Four movie, and they would. No, it'll be a Marvel movie. It'll be serviceable. Focus on family and exploration. Yeah, just make it like Lost in Space or whatever. You think the Chuds are going to complain about She-Hulk having muscles? The Chuds are already complaining about She-Hulk because they did not know that She-Hulk is an actual comic book character, and they think that She-Hulk is like them trying to like force diversity by making Hulk a woman. So like the Chuds are already like in like pulling that shit. So yeah, they're going to make some pretty dumb takes on it. That's for sure. I am not looking forward to the discourse when that show comes out, whenever it comes out. Again, I don't follow this stuff very well. Didn't they succeed with a very similar concept with Doctor Strange? Did they not? Yeah. I actually like Doctor Strange. Not a lot of people did, but it was as far as these as far as Marvel movies go, it's like it was, at least it had some cool looking shit in it. So again, are there any anarchists in the MCU? I think they had some in there was a TV show I didn't watch, the Captain Falcon Winter Soldier show. They made like these like Antifa bad guys or something. I don't know too much about what happened, but it was apparently really shitty. Wait, we have a She-Hulk movie. No, it's a Disney Plus show they're making, and it's being headed by, I don't remember what her name is, but the head showrunner for the show. I think she was involved with the movie Crazy Rich Asians, and also was in the writer's room for Rick and Morty, and is famously the person who wrote the Pickle Rick episode. So I have no idea what she's going to come up with with something like that. I will be into the Miss Marvel show, though. That is a show I want to see. Captain America is basically an anarchist, huh? I don't know. He's an anarchist for himself, I guess. He believes that he shouldn't have any laws dictating what he does. The Flag Smashers. Oh, yeah, that's what they're called. I'm waiting to reveal that Zemo is Hydra. Everyone is Hydra. They're all Hydra. You just wait long enough and they'll all be Hydra. Pickle Hulk. There's an episode of the graphic novel where Strange takes on Big Pharma. Oh, God. She wrote Pickle Rick, so it's got to be worth looking at. Who knows what it's going to be. I don't remember what the writer's name is. Jessica Gao, that's it. That's her name. That's the person who is heading up that show. But yeah, she wrote for Rick and Morty for season 4, I want to say. And yeah, she was part of the Pickle Rick episode. She wrote the Pickle Rick episode, and yeah. I'm trying to remember what else she did. But she's done a bunch of stuff. Do I think She-Hulk might end up Uncanny Valley? Who knows? It's all Uncanny Valley at this point. Um, Alright. I remember when a bunch of anarchists on Reddit were upset about these Flag Smasher folks, and it was like, who the heck cares? It's probably going to flop. Yeah, I don't think anybody really liked that show. I can't think of anybody who talks about it in a positive way. There's basically a big pharma exec using black magic to make himself immortal. That sounds about right. It's basically what the pharma industry is, right? What's it called? If they're gonna do, if this whole thing with like Silicon Valley bros who are like talking about living forever by injecting themselves with the blood of young people, if that becomes more of a thing, then they need to make a Blade show about that. They need to bring Blade back and do something about those and make those people vampires. That's the only way you got to do it. Do freaking Blade, but like what's it called? The vampire main villain is like an Elizabeth Holmes type character. All right. Man, we have talked so much about Marvel movies, which I am only like vaguely interested in. I find them they're very like, you know, samey. They're just a thing that exists, and because it's like the only thing to watch, you watch them. There's not that much new content coming out these days that's any good to me anyway. How do you resurrect the left in the USA? I don't know. If you have an answer for that, though, I suggest that you write it down because we could really use an answer to that question right now. But it might be like, you know, getting over our distrust and, factionalism and bullshit. Marshala Ali is playing him? Really? Oh, wasn't he already in a Marvel thing? Wasn't he like in what's it called? He was on the one of the Netflix shows. I think he was like in like Luke Cage or something. It's been so long since the last Star Trek mentioned for the stream. Yeah, for real. Did I watch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.? No, not really. I heard it had, what's it called, though? I heard it had Ghost Rider, who is, I think, one of my favorite Marvel characters that I don't know if they're ready to bring him back into stuff. Because Ghost Rider fucking slaps. But I think that Nicolas Cage has done his damage, and I don't think they're going to be bringing him into anything anytime soon. How do you think Hollywood will react if all the people who do the grunt work on their sets will go on strike? They will weaponize social media to make the strikers the villains. And everybody will be really anti the strikes. And then they'll be like, oh, well, because of that, you guys don't get any, like, what's it called? The movies are now going to be twice as expensive. They'll find some excuse to, one, make it the strikers' fault, and then two, use that as an excuse to charge more for movies or something. Harley Quinn is a great show. This is true. He was Cottonmouth. Yeah. I believe that is true. Netflix Marvel doesn't count, apparently. Okay. Figuring out what is or isn't in the what's it called? In the universe based on like what deals went sour between Disney and whoever they were working with for content partners is getting very confusing. It also sucks because I feel like the Netflix shows were some of the best stuff that came out of this entire, like, project, this entire Marvel multimedia project. Like, what's it called? Jessica Jones, I think, is probably like Jessica Jones in general, I think, is like some of the best stuff to come out of making Marvel stuff. And Daredevil also had some pretty great stuff when it was when Daredevil was on its good game. It was pretty good. You made a meme. Fash Blaster. Got him. You just winged him and made him a Nazgul. Wow. All right. Different Ghost Rider. That was the Hispanic one who drives a car. Oh. I still want Ghost Rider. Ghost Rider, what's it called? There's going to be, so like they've already, like the Marvel people have already gotten into magic. They've already breached magic. So the next thing they need to do is breach into like heaven and hell stuff. Because that's also a Marvel thing. And so when they do that, then they can get Ghost Rider in. Because Ghost Rider, is like a cool, I like his whole thing. Let's see. The new Suicide Squad movie I really liked. Is it out? The James Gunn Suicide Squad movie? Can't believe how much of the stream has turned into talking about fucking superheroes. But, you know, I follow the chat. ABC stuff's out of the MCU because Feige personally didn't like it. Okay. And the Netflix stuff is out, apparently, which is weird because that shit was good. At least, I don't know. I didn't watch the crossover show they did, The Defenders. I never watched that. And I have a hard time getting into Luke Cage. But I like Jessica Jones quite a bit. And Daredevil was pretty good. Can we agree that What If was kind of a waste of a premise? Yeah. It's fine. It's like most Marvel stuff. It's fine. It's perfectly adequate. Have I watched Stargate? And if so, did I like it? I've watched the movie. I haven't seen any of the shows. Do you have any leftist comic book recommendations? Ooh, I have to think about it. Oh, I forgot about Iron Fist. Yeah, I'd never watched that. I heard it was terrible. People get mad at strikers if it results in movies and TV shows being delayed? Probably. That's my guess. That's how they're going to weaponize the delays they have to go through. If the strike lasts a long time, who knows? It's been out for a month. All right, I guess I should watch it at some point. Let's see. Immortal Hulk. Oh man, Immortal Hulk is a good comic book to check out. I don't know if there's not much leftist stuff in it, but it is good. It's weird body horror stuff. All right. Yeah, I'll probably end up watching. I don't like the other thing too is I don't watch movies very often. From the way I describe it, I basically don't do anything. I don't watch anything. I have no hobbies. I just do nothing. All right, I got a question here from Matt Lipton. All these right-winger influences like Shapiro and Crowder calling for civil war. Shapiro calling for civil war? Jeez. If one broke out, would they all just flee? Oh, for real. Yeah. They would, like, what's it called? No blood will ever get on these people's hands. They are all fancy lads from university. They're not hardcore. They're just playing one for money. One last question. Why in all these movies the main confrontation has the world's most boring pop music playing? They could afford AC/DC, Slayer, Public Enemy. Because then people could be like, I reckon... Because the thing is, like, a lot of Disney's, like, thing is, like, these days, is weaponizing the people pointing at a thing and being like, I know that thing. And then that being the thing that makes them like it. I recognize that. I understood that reference. So therefore, I think it's good. Which is sort of like basically defining this entire goddamn like media era. Is Ben aware about how dangerous it is for a Jew to be boosting the far right? Probably. I just think I don't know. I think he's just in it to make a lot of money for himself. I think at the end of the day he thinks he'll be safe because he doesn't know what happens when you get bitten by the snake that you're trying to handle. It was a bad analogy. All right, let's see what we got next. How would a local anarchist community development maintain its infrastructure without the use of the state? Whenever I see someone talk about building rails or metro, they always look to city or national government to do it. A lot of that kind of stuff can be done through like confederated networks and syndicates. Like a lot of like anarcho-syndicalists would think that a lot of people who work in different types of sectors would be part of like large unions called syndicates, and that they would, like, for example, the railroad builder union or whatever would also manage, like, the building of railroads and where they would go and those kinds of things. And also just like, the resources and everything for them would be contributed by the communities that are, building through it and such like that. Yeah. Is there any future for a global language such as Esperanto or something less Eurocentric? Less Eurocentric, no. I do think that we're not too many decades away from English being a de facto language. It already is a de facto language in most of the world, or at least a language that you can get by on. And I imagine that's just going to continue to be the case, unfortunately. It's growing, not shrinking. Though there is some talk about, this is also not European safe, or not anti-European centric, but because of the population boosts, in a few decades, French is going to be a much more widely spoken language because of a big population boom in countries like Côte d'Ivoire and Senegal and stuff. So we'll see. All right. Ugh. All right, let's see what we got. Today on the Lib Legal podcast, they were talking about an ongoing January 6th prosecutions. At one point, they mentioned a legal aid lawyer who's been assigned to represent some crazy sovereign citizen woman who took part in the insurrection. If you're a legal aid lawyer and you're assigned to represent a white nationalist in court, should you agree to do it? I mean, I wouldn't. I don't know if you have choices in the matter, if you're like a civil defender or whatever, or a legal aid defender. I don't know if you actually have the choice to say no, but I would if I could. To the point where I would maybe even object to, like I might, quit over objections. Is there any chance of Spanish replacing English as the main language in the U.S.? I think some conservatives are worried about that. No. There is a chance of Spanish being a significant, like a significantly represented language, and like Spanish being a very common language in America, that's already the case, and it is going to be more so the case. But I don't think English is ever in threat of being overtaken, for sure. All right. Has neoliberalism ever really been popular with regular people? So I feel like a lot of modern progressives like to imagine neoliberalism is on the way out because people are rejecting it. Was there ever actually a time when like regular working class people thought privatizing stuff and deregulating the economy was a good idea? Or did parties just run out of other stuff to do in neoliberalism once they were owning power? Yeah, there was a time period like that. It was the 80s, basically. The 80s and the 90s was a period when everybody was really into deregulating and stuff like that. It was definitely like, a consciousness-raising project by neoliberals. But there was a time when those kinds of ideas were very mainstream and very popular in like the 1980s and 1990s. Would it be bad if the U.S. became a Spanish-speaking country? Not at all. I just don't think it would happen. Should a person like that have a lawyer then? Well, that's what's complicated because there's this whole thing about how everybody should be entitled to a lawyer. I just don't think it should be me. I don't think I would be impartial to do that. But yeah, because when you have no lawyer, you're basically a kangaroo court at that point, and you don't want that. Cool. When did you begin my interest in researching? Like academic stuff? I've always had an interest in that. I wanted to be a scientist when I was a kid. I've always wanted to have an academic type job. So why is it called a kangaroo court? Because you hop in and hop out. Like it's you're like, what's it called? You're not there for very long. A kangaroo court is a term for a court where your fate has already been decided before your trial's even begun. So you're not even there for that long. So it's like, hop in, hop out type situation. Alrighty. There was a weird period when I was like 18 where I wanted to become a evolutionary biologist, but specifically in the study of the evolution of eusociality. But then I realized that I'm not very good at the mathing parts. I feel like I would have been a terrible biologist. Well, this woman has no lawyer now because she fired her public defender as representing herself. She wrote an insane brief to the court that referenced the Magna Carta. Yeah, I mean, that's her right. I just realized it is 2 o'clock, so we should probably wrap this stream up. Because it's election day and I've got a lot of volunteer work to do. So I'm going to raid somebody and we will be moving on with our day. So thank you very much for coming out, everybody. We're going to raid, let's raid No Comment Chick, maybe? Is she... Yeah, let's raid No Comment Chick. Let's do that. All right. Everybody, you've been great. I will be back tomorrow night. Yeah, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, as you all know. And I will, yeah, I'll be around. 1 second.